We're here with Practice Habits, and the whole point of Practice Habits is to help practices like yours learn how to implement new technology. I was a CEO of Vance Thompson Vision for 20 years, and one of the things that I always found is, boy, these doctors have a lot of great ideas, and we have no idea how to implement them. And so we had to learn the hard way for a bunch of years, and boy, did we grow up fast. Oh, here we go.
Yay.
Hey, look at that hair.
Say hi.
Aw.
Congrats. Yeah. Hi.
Thanks.
Stealing the show. Our viewership's gonna go way up.
Getting that education started early, huh?
That's
There you
right.
go. I need a new
Yeah.
practice partner.
Yeah, good, good.
I'm
But
gonna mute
we,
myself though.
yeah, that's thanks, Rohan. But that's what a gift that is to be able to see them. But the goal is just to practice or learn what others have been doing in their practice, learn from them. So hopefully it's a little bit easier for the rest of us. All of these can be found later on the Practice Habits website, but it's just hopefully to demystify the back office work, the implementation side of our work. So sometimes we're talking specifically about a business issue. Sometimes we're talking specifically about a vendor partner and their ability to help us. Sometimes we're featuring doctors who are hard charging and leading the way. And that's what we get the pleasure of doing today with my friend, Dr. Allison Early. Thanks for joining us. And we're really going to talk about you and how you're started from the ground up, left a busy practice, doing what you love, but also wanting to do it just a little bit differently. And I want to just get to know you a little bit more, let our audience get to know you. So first of all, um, tell us about you, where you're at in Ohio, and how you found your way to this call today.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me, Matt. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. I remember our first conversation was probably about 3 or 4 months before I really decided to take the leap and, as you said, leave a large, busy practice and start this solo journey. So you kind of been able to see me from the very beginning or pre-beginning. But so my story, so I finished ophthalmology training in 2018. I've more or less been in Ohio my whole life, and my husband and I decided to settle in Cincinnati. He's an orthopedic surgeon, and I'm, of course, an ophthalmologist. And we both found positions in Cincinnati, which was wonderful. It's where we both went to medical school, it's where his family is from. And so we started our respective practices. We started having kids, and we were just kind of in that early practice development and family building stage for the first handful of years. And as we sort of came up for air, we have three little kids, and the oldest is 7, and then we have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. So there was a lot of, kid stuff happening for a few years, but we got through that, and we both had found ourselves with really pretty busy surgical practices. And during those years, my former practice had gone through several iterations of essentially private equity, private equitization. And I came out sort of looking around and saying, well, I've been very involved in this group for the last 5 or 6 years, and I have grown to be a very busy surgeon. I feel really comfortable with my clinical skills. I've always been somebody in all stages of my life that I like to be very involved, and I like to be on committees, and in sort of, to borrow the quote from Hamilton, I say all the time, I like to be in the room where it happens. So I kind of like to know like the movers and shakers and be privy to all of that. And so in my former practice environment, that parlayed into, by 5 years or really like 4 years into practice, I was elected by my peers to be on the clinical governance board, later was chairing committees on the executive level for the entire PE organization. And I felt that while I liked being involved in all of that, some of it sort of in name only, like ultimately decisions are being made by people who are not really on the physician level in that style of practice. And so as I started looking at what the future would look like, and at this point I was about 35 years old, and I said, I could stay here, and the next 25 or 30 years will probably look a lot like things look right now. in that type of practice. There's not really further advancement that you can have beyond where I was. Like I said, I'd been, essentially on kind of the top tier of a lot of the leadership things that are available. And I know that I love what I do. I love taking care of patients. I love operating, but I really just felt like there had to be something more that I could do in my career, really build something.
So how many
And
years into your practice were you at that point?
this was about year 5 to 6.
5 to 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just as an aside, you and I have to give a shout out to her because I know she'll pay attention to this later. But Dr. Lori Preventure is a good friend of yours from the neighborhood also,
Yes.
and you guys came up through the ranks together, going through similar questions at the same time. Ultimately decided to go out west to Vance Thompson Vision, which is some of the first times I heard your name. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and so, there's some fun parallel paths there, but I want to just transition us. First of all, you've got a ton of great background. And so you feel like you're kind of topping out as far as your ability to do as much as you can to affect your own
Mhm.
practice health, but you're in a big machine that's hard to affect change. And so what I want to know is there some kind of like go, no go moment? I had a slide up, but I wanted to see everybody better. It said, what was the inciting incident? What was the moment where you're like, to channel Hamilton again, you went from I want to be in the room where it happens, where you went to I'm not throwing away my shot.
All right. I think it was more of a death by a thousand cuts. I'm happy to say there was never a blow up or any, really dramatic moment. But as I started mulling through all these thoughts and thinking about the future and what am I building and who am I in this career in this organization, um, I think it was just kind of like I'm not the same person that I was when I finished training. I wouldn't say that the practice is the same entity that it was when I joined, and that's okay. And so there just was kind of like a divergence, and that's all right. So my first realization was I don't think that this is where I see myself for the next couple of decades. And like you mentioned, Lori, who's a very dear friend of mine, we really were going through these thoughts in a similar timeline. So we would discuss these things with each other and we talked about all different things. So once I decided that there was going to be something different in my future, then the question was what? So that was stage one, was like, am
I'm
I going to
going.
stay or am I going to
I'm
go?
going. Yeah, we're going.
Once I made that decision, then it was really looking at what are the other opportunities out there. And I knew that I wanted something that was physician owned. So one option ended up being a smaller, but still very robust physician owned private practice, not dissimilar from BTV. So very, well established, high volume surgery center, multiple locations, partnership opportunity,
Charismatic business
charismatic.
leader.
Exactly, exactly. And so I started
Jokes.
exploring that pathway. And the other option that I had considered was going solo. And when I looked at really just kind of my overall life situation, there were a couple of things. One, I thought there's maybe a chance that if I just go and work for somebody else, I might end up feeling the same way. Like it's not really mine. And if I sell my house, move my family, make my husband find a new job, put the kids in a new school, and end up still not really finding what I was looking for, that's asking a lot of
That's a lot
everybody
of
around me.
disruption.
Exactly. And the alternative was not making any of them change anything that they are doing, but me taking this risk, which felt really large and scary to fully put myself out there with no safety net. And that's
Yeah.
not something that I had ever been in that position before, because a career in medicine for a lot of people, and I had a very straight trajectory. So I worked hard in high school. I was accepted to a program that was like a dual admissions to medical school. Worked hard in college, worked hard in medical school, did well on my tests, matched into residency, like everything was very linear. And if you did the right things, then you should be able to advance to the next step. And so this was the first time that I was really truly taking a leap that didn't have like a known where I'm going to put my foot down at the end of the jump. But I felt like the opportunities were either stay where I was, which was sort of low risk, low reward, move my family, which felt high risk and probably high reward, or location wise, stay the same, but low risk, but potentially high reward. So that was like kind of the matrix that I had in my head on risk reward.
Yeah.
So that was
And at the same
the
time, though, just to
genesis.
just to hold the thought for a second, at the same time, while staying there is you're keeping the things you love. That's the high
Hmm.
reward part, and that's the low risk part. I'm sorry, but it's still high risk because you are making a big bet on yourself. We're going to get to that with our next question, but kind of finish what you're saying about how you finally decided to go out on your own.
Yeah. So actually, it's funny that you bring up Lori because one moment that I think was really galvanizing in that process was a conversation I was having with her. And it was after she had already moved to Omaha and we got together just to hang out for a weekend in Chicago. And I was mulling over these options and she said, what is your fear? What is it that you're afraid of going solo? And I said, it's the fear of failure. I like, what if I say I'm doing this and it doesn't work out? And she was so taken aback. She's like, I can't even believe that is not what I was expecting you to say at all. You are not going to fail. Like she really gave me a reality check that she had faith in me that I could do that. And it was not what she was expecting to hear me say at all. So I think that was a big part of my personal growth was just knowing that um, some risk is necessary. And in medicine, we're so risk averse. Everything is very cautious and thinking about worst case scenario and taking the conservative route and everything. Like that's kind of just the mindset that you have
Hmm.
ingrained in you as you go through medical training. So it's very different than an entrepreneurial mindset where it is with greater risk comes the potential for greater reward.
It's interesting because while there's an entrepreneurial piece of it, there's also this sense that our doctors, and I know is the drum you beat, march to as well. But it's that I don't want somebody outside the room deciding what's best for my patient, and whether that's an investment in technology that might cost a little bit more.
Hmm.
That's a me decision, and I'm also
Hmm.
willing to be wrong. So if that means
Hmm.
I'm not making as much money, well, that's kind of on me. And if it means
Right.
we chose the wrong technology because that company didn't stay around, that's also on me. So
Hmm.
we'll make mistakes, but they're my mistakes.
Yes.
And that does kind of up the ante a little bit on the expectation of ourselves,
Uh-huh.
but that
Uh-huh.
also gives you kind of some swagger and some pride. It has to. And
It does.
so I'm glad to know that Lori was influential in that. That's nice that what I mentioned on a whim is something that was a turning point. I want to talk just for a second, and I really want you to do some narrowing in your mind because we've got people here who have created websites for folks. We've got people who help with patient education, patient pre-education. We've got folks who work, and with practices to help, get to the phones. All kinds of vendors, but also some practices. What are the biggest challenges? What were the biggest challenges that you felt like, man, I got to get this done now, where you felt like hair was on fire when you were setting out to do this project?
Well, I think the biggest categories I would say number one is the practice location. So that is what I've spent a lot of time over the course of the last several months working on is finding a location, vetting different options, and then once I settled on a location, just all of the business and logistics that it takes to secure it, have everything signed. So we're still kind of finalizing and trying to close on the office space, hopefully by the end of the month or maybe Thanksgiving is really what I'm hoping for. And then to start construction. So there's so many different moving parts with all of this. And I was fortunate to be plugged in through other colleagues of mine who went through similar processes a few months ahead of me, they were able to say, this is who I used as a commercial real estate broker. And then the broker tells you who they'd recommend for lending. And then the lenders say, this is who I recommend for this. So everything sort of builds on itself. And you come into contact with all these people who thankfully are just available to, write up an insurance policy today so that I can turn
Yeah.
that in tomorrow. So it's been a big learning process on the real estate side, which was definitely a route that I didn't have to take, but I'm in Southwest Ohio, which is not an area where, property value is outrageous. So for our situation, we decided after looking at options for spaces to lease versus spaces to own, it seemed like in this market, it made a lot of sense to just make an investment in the real estate. And then that will be tax beneficial, of course, in terms of leasing back to my practice. And so that has been a big part of the effort up front, is working through all of that real estate.
What
And then I would
what
say,
about access to capital during this
yeah,
time when you've got a no compete this year?
uh-huh.
I don't know, I mean, where's revenue coming from?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, the best thing is that well, I mean, I'm married, I have a dual income family, or we always were, but we really have not lived outside of our means. So we don't have car payments. We just both drive cars that are paid off. So we've really tried to live in a way that allowed us to save a lot. So that absolutely has come in very handy. The beginning of the year, I wasn't really sure what my personal income would look like, but I have been able to fall back on different consulting opportunities. But really, what has come through wonderfully in many ways has actually been finding a practice outside of my non-compete radius where I practice part-time. So not only is that, of course, some revenue coming in, but it's really been amazing to work in like a true private practice setting, a very busy, robust practice that's been around for 35 years. I'm doing a lot of surgery. I'm only there a few days a month, but still doing about 50% of the surgical volume that I was doing before. And so not only am I keeping my clinical skills up and still being able to try new technology and, work with patients, but being in that practice environment has been just a wealth of knowledge on the business side and the back
Right.
end, and really thinking about things in a different way from the practice management side than I did when I was in more of an employed situation. So it has been such a blessing, and I will plan on, continuing that relationship with that practice for as long as it makes sense. I
Yeah.
more or less, they keep trying to get me to just come there full time, but it's like a couple hours away. It would be very difficult to do that. But I told them I'm happy to keep coming on a intermittent basis until I'm like losing money in my new practice to go there. I'll continue coming because it's been such a great experience.
And I think it's a really important point to remember because we all interact with doctors, and many of them have joined some kind of private equity model, right? And they
Hmm.
either were a beneficiary of that or they were employed when it happened, and they're wondering what to do. They feel stuck. And just remember, it's not that far outside your non-compete range to still
Hmm.
keep up your skills. And I don't know a lot of places that have too many doctors. Right? Everybody
Right.
says they do when you're thinking of coming into their town. They're like, oh, there's too many here. We could never support another one. But every market that Vance Thompson Vision went into, all of the providers said that they're way too saturated, and they're now the busiest in almost every one of those markets as well after just a couple of
Hmm.
years. And I think it just speaks to the overall need. And I'll bet that practice also benefits from you, not just the revenue that you're bringing in and the patients you're helping serve, but the shot in the arm that they get with the vibrancy and the hunger for new technologies. And you have a
Hmm.
place now for companies to come in and demo, new
Yeah,
technologies.
exactly.
And they have the opportunity to make a sale to you and this practice. So, if I'm a
Totally.
rep, I'm thinking
Yeah,
that's to double down.
totally. And that has been already manifest really with, I know the last time that you and I
Right.
chatted was on the light adjustable lens topic. And so I knew as a new practice, my niche is refractive cataract surgery and refractive surgery in general. And I knew that I wanted to have light adjustable lens as part of my offering. And part of that involves making a capital investment in the light delivery device, which is sort of the barrier to entry for a lot of practices who aren't familiar with the technology. And that's exactly how this practice was. They had looked into it, they'd considered it, they were interested in it, but it's hard for them to commit without having experience with the lens. So we were able to actually work out that I would go ahead and make the investment in the device, but until I open my practice, it's located there. So it gives them an opportunity to sort of demo the platform without any risk other than, it's sitting in a unused exam lane. And so from the industry side, they have my business, and then they have the potential for new business at this practice when I bring it to Cincinnati. So,
Right.
so it's been kind of fun working through solutions like that on different topics.
Yeah, and it's attractive then it makes so much sense for industry to be supportive of your move because there's even more gravitational pull towards supporting
Yeah.
you in certain ways. Now, I mean we could keep talking and we're going to. We usually go about 35 minutes in our discussion and then we make sure there's time for folks to ask you questions as well. But I'm curious because I think the next big thing that would be my fear and has been my fear is how are we going to find people
Hmm.
to bring on and help. And when do we do that?
You
Um,
mean patients or staff?
I'm talking staff.
Okay. So, excuse me, I have a little bit of a head cold. Yeah, I would say what keeps me up at night a little bit more is there going to be patients, but I'm trying to just reassure myself, like you said, that it's a big pie and you can always expand it. There's room at the table for everybody. There's lots of patients out there, all those things.
Well,
Staff, that's been a
right.
little
Just
bit more of
remember
a challenge.
there's hundreds of thousands of people in the Cincinnati
Yeah.
metro area, and they
Yeah,
all want to see.
exactly. Exactly. So staff wise, that is a little bit more complex because what we do is so technical and we have to have people who know what they're doing, especially for a small practice. It'd be very hard for me to start from zero. And the fact of the matter, and what a lot of practices have experienced, is that turnover is kind of high in this field. So finding people who have experience and are willing to really take a leap of their own and move from maybe a larger practice setting to a small de novo practice setting. And I will tell them that the job description is not really what the job description says. Like everybody is all hands on deck, including myself. And we might have to change light bulbs and take out trash and do all sorts of things as a small practice that may not have been part of the job description wherever you were before, and it may not be what the job description on Indeed says, but everybody will be wearing a lot of different hats. And part of the reason for that is that I have intentions of, number one, running a fairly lean overhead, so it'll be all hands on deck like I said. But number two, I personally want to know where every single thing plugs in, how to troubleshoot every single device, how to operate every single device. And that is something that I felt very removed from or very separated from in previous practice experience. Just I would have no idea where to even begin if there was a problem with some software or equipment or what. So that is something that's important to me, that I can plug any hole and fix any problem myself.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
maintaining that versatility is, I think, very important for a new practice, especially.
Yeah, I think especially starting out, right? And when the patients come, which they will, and they'll come probably sooner than you think. I look forward to you coming next year and telling us how quickly you needed to find a number two,
Yeah.
your business leader. Because while I really, you need to know those things now, and that's kind of the joy of doing what you're doing, is you get to design this
Hmm.
thing from scratch,
Hmm.
make it just your way. But you'll find very quickly that your initial, at least I believe, you may find very quickly that your initial passion of being in the OR is the
Hmm.
thing that you would rather be doing. And if so long as you can trust someone, to handle
Without a doubt.
things, the way you would handle them in your stead.
Right.
And I look forward to those days with you. A last question. I'll finish that thought first. I look forward to you having those days where that becomes your necessary next step, right?
So do I, Matt.
Yeah. A lot of people have helped you and mentored you along the way, and we haven't covered nearly enough on the stuff, all of the stuff,
Hmm.
how you set up your payment processes, where do the accounts go, which accounts should I have,
Hmm.
how do I choose the contractors, furnishings, policies, procedures, risk, all those different things. And today, she mentioned before our call started that has been her big insurance day, right? Because
Hmm.
you can get financing so long as you have, key person insurance and all of those scary things. But
Yep.
who has kind of walked with you through this time? Because nobody goes it alone, much as we like.
Nobody goes it alone. Yeah. And I really have to say, if I did not have the network and all the connections that I've been able to make by kind of putting myself out there and going to meetings and networking and getting to know people, I don't know that I would have even begun on this journey. But if I had, it would have been much, much more difficult to get things off the ground. But I have to, I guess I'll shout out some of the major people. So some of my biggest mentors in the field have really helped me on this journey. So I connected a few years back with Dr. Gary Wirtz, who's in Lexington, Kentucky, and he really, both clinically and in the business environment and just in so many ways, has been such a great mentor to me. And he was able to connect me to his former practice COO, who was with his very busy large practice for many years and retired and took on more of a consulting role. Her name's Jenny Lackey, and she's been phenomenal. She has been by my side or, virtually by my side in every Zoom meeting I've had on all the kind of operational aspects that I really didn't have baseline knowledge on. And then there's a really robust network of solo ophthalmologists and small practice owners who are extremely generous with their knowledge and wisdom and experience. And so I have connected to a lot of people who are, maybe 6 to 12 or 24 months ahead of me, or 5 years ahead of me, or 15 years ahead of me. And that network has been tremendously valuable. So some of these people, Brian Schaefer, who I know you guys know from VTV days, and Brett Mueller and Bennett Walton. And I mean, the list is very long. Rob Melendez. There's so many people who have been incredibly generous in connecting me to their resources. So through some of those connections, I was connected to Glacial, who did my website, and an OD referral platform. There it is, beautiful website. And so I'm working with somebody on OD referral management that I was referred to. And even my interior designer, Brett Mueller, connected me to. And my contractor, other former partners of mine, worked with to build out their new practice. And so all of the networking and connections that I have spent the last couple of years forging those pathways. And there were times where I was kind of like, why am I going to all these meetings? What am I getting out of this? It's fun. And I like meeting all these people, but thinking to myself, like, what will this lead to? And to now be in a place where I can look back on that time that I spent, and it's really incredible the way that I can just pick up my phone and text somebody and say, hey, where did you buy your YAG laser? Do you have a contact? Or what medical record system are you using for this? Or even like, what payroll system do you use? Because I can research 1,000 different payroll systems. Like, gosh, I don't know which one. They all kind of sound the same. So I just need somebody to tell me which one they use and that they've had a good experience. And then I'll be able to narrow down the list and choose one. So really, without all of those people who are across the board in ophthalmology, I found people are so willing to sit down with you, pick up the phone, and just share a little bit about what they've learned in their experience. And, all I can say is that I hope I can pay it forward to somebody else coming up a little bit after me.
Yeah, I think that really helpful to find that community of folks who are willing to share it for a couple of reasons. One, they want to see you win, and two, and I know you'll be like this on the other side of this. You're proud. You're proud of
Hmm.
it. And there's a
Hmm.
lot of work, once you've decided, we showcased our friend's website, Glacial, because it's beautiful, by the way, and I love the name.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank
but
you.
you find, like, once you've run this gauntlet, once you've done the Appalachian Trail, you kind of want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be proud of it because you get to you did it in some ways on your own, but with a lot of help from folks. So
100%.
I know a couple of my friends had to jump off the call, but I want to open up the conversation to folks on out in the field. What questions do you have for Dr. Early as we continue to have conversations here?
All right, I got one.
Good. Okay. Hit us.
Hey, Dr. Early.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. You are, just a side comment, you're so well spoken. We always
Thank
enjoy hearing
you.
you, just hearing you tell stories and articulate. A question I'm always kind of curious about, and I know you've talked about it previously, but how did you think about acquiring like all the lasers, all the tools, and deciding like I'm going to be doing these procedures, I'm going to be lens only, I'm going to be doing lasers only? Just you talk a little bit about that thought process and the process of like making the decision of what big purchases to make.
Yeah, absolutely. That has been another really large piece of the puzzle. And I definitely have been fortunate to be able to take time to figure all of this out. So, as everybody on this call knows, I'm sure the equipment that we really require to just even perform a basic eye exam, to have one exam room is going to cost probably somewhere around at least $25,000 just to have an exam lane set up to see one patient. And that doesn't even scratch the surface on all of the diagnostics. And for my case, as an office-based surgery suite, I have to, purchase all of the surgical equipment as well. So the equipment budget is very high. And most of that, in my case, will be financed. So I had to really drill down, and I started out by making a list of what are all of the tools that I need and what did I use for this in the past? Who was the vendor? What are some other options? For, let's say, a biometer, there are a couple of leaders in the field, an IOL Master, a Lenstar, maybe an Argos. Those are probably like the most common ones that people use. So then you can talk to the vendors themselves, but there's a lot of secondary market distributors who might have a refurbished model for a good price, but do they have a warranty and do they have a service contract? And so I think I probably have 3 or 4 different spreadsheets that are all with the aim of kind of narrowing down the funnel. So I got quotes from multiple distributors, direct vendors, and just kept kind of going back to them and saying, well, this other company told me this number. Can you do any better? What if I sign now? And that whole dance has been a big learning experience because in a couple of cases, I've learned that I probably am going to choose what I initially thought I was going to choose, but by being able to compare quotes and come back and forth with the vendor and say, hey, I got a better number or better deal from this other person. Can you do any better? And just by being able to kind of take the time on getting the best pricing I can get has positioned me to where my initial estimate that I submitted to the bank for my loan request, everything's fortunately at this point coming in a little bit under what I had kind of forecasted. And so part of it will be through my bank lender. Most of the equipment companies also have partnerships with third-party lenders or other banks. So you can, take out a line of credit. And, we are putting in some self-funded capital into it just to do kind of the real estate aspect of it. But, there's a lot of things that you can negotiate on as far as all these contracts go. So whether it's just that price outright, or whether it's a service contract or interest-free loan for a period of time, or maybe 6 months of interest only, or net 120 to when you start getting your new invoice. So all of these words that I had never even heard before, but now I'm able to speak semi-fluently on,
Really
or
important.
it's so important. And I learned a new term recently from a friend in town. He said he likes to ask for an out the door price. I'm like, what does that mean? So, so he
Yeah.
explained to me that that is, you know, if somebody quotes you on a piece of equipment that's, let's say, $60,000, and then there's taxes and delivery fee and all these things on top of it, he will go back and say, can you do an out the door price of, you know, the total being 60K instead of 60 plus X, Y, and Z. And even that number, these numbers are also distorted to me now, because if you tell me that a piece of equipment costs $15,000, I'm like, wow, what a deal. That's like nothing, but that's a
Yeah.
lot of money. You know, it's like everything is very high sticker price. And that's just the reality of being a cataract and refractive surgeon, is that we have a lot of technical equipment, and there's no way to do it without having that type of equipment. And I want to position myself as being the destination for really the premium refractive surgery. And so I don't want kind of rinky dink equipment and old stuff. And so that is part of my vision. And I want to have more advanced diagnostics and aberrometry and things like that that maybe aren't utilized everywhere else around me.
Couple of quick questions on that. First of all, to respond, you'll find that a lot of companies will find ways to do deals with you. Um, you know, Perhaps our capital equipment over here for your surgery center footprint, or clean room, OBS. We'll show you a discount over here on the Lens Star, right?
Mm-hmm.
So long as you're getting this footprint over here, or in future lens costs, or everything's kind
Right.
of wrapped into a bundle.
Right.
The larger the organization, the more that they can kind of play games with that. And I don't mean to be, it's not condescending when I say play games. They're going to try to bring as much value as they can for as efficient cost for you, but then that also comes with some kind of commitment, right? So it's just
Mm-hmm.
important for folks to know how those things all work. And then also from a cash flow standpoint, which is something our doctors really never had to worry about, but everything is hopefully coming down to not having to pay for it until doors open
Yes,
as much as possible,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
but at the same time, my guess is that your vendors up until now, your partners, have teams they want to feed as well. So it's
Right.
tricky managing all that. Um,
Right. Right.
Rohan just asked a question, and I like it because he says, you want to be premium and you want to have that premium feel. Thanks for the question, Jamie. But you want to feel premium and yet have as few people as possible and feel like the aesthetic is
Mm-hmm.
really feels good. How will you do that lean?
Well, I think part of what I was saying about having all hands on deck. So I want, and the people who I am hoping to hire, I know are very, very, very capable of taking a patient from check-in to check-out. And I think myself as a patient, I would feel like I was having a better experience if I was not being passed off to 10 different people and having to walk by myself down to the other end of the office and find where I'm supposed to go. So to have one person, one staff member take the patient from the waiting room through their biometry and diagnostics into their exam room and workup, and then I come in to do the rest of the examination and the conversation, and I will be having that conversation with the patients to really discuss their desires and needs and what would be the best fit for them. And then those same individuals will be there on the day of surgery, and they will recognize the patient and know them. And that's really something that, from my experience, patients really appreciate when they come into the office time after time and they are seeing the same people and they get to know the person a little bit, and we learn about the patient's lifestyle and needs, and that they have a a brother that lives in Denver and my brother lives in Denver. These things that you just have the opportunity to talk about when you have a little bit more FaceTime with the patient. And then, of course, as volume grows, the team will grow too. But a situation that I am hoping to avoid is a bloated payroll that's not being, outpaced or equivalent by the revenue that's coming in. And so starting small and wearing more than one hat until we have the ability to hire more people and make a more robust team to meet the needs of the patients.
Yeah, and to answer your question further, I think it's helpful to just remember that there's an allocation of bodies, right? But then there's also the talent of the folks that are, representing those bodies. And what I mean by this is that if you go into a 3 Michelin star restaurant, I mean, really, to experience it, there's a whole bunch of people running around. But yet to experience the capability of that chef, and Dr. Early would be the chef in this case, you need one good server or host and a
hmm
plate and a fork.
hmm
And everything else is like kind of
Yep.
immaterial
hmm
for a while. And so it is about making sure that you're finding people to do a certain task, but that the people themselves have this intuition, this ability to read a room, to be able to, walk that patient back in a way that is meaningful and to pay attention to those details. We call it FORD, family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. That
Uh-huh.
they're listening for those cues to put it in the record. So when the patient gets to you, or next week, it comes up and you can actually surprise and delight them with what we know about them, and they're worth fussing over. And
Right.
so, it's the classic, we fall to our systems. So, you want to have a few people who can do those individual heroic things,
hmm
and yet as you expand, you've got to, not everybody will be. So how are we going to create training and systems to make them
Yep.
be players as well? So, I mean, it's the next few years, I mean, you're going to just have so much fun learning all those things, but it's a good question. I'm going to ask one more here from Roma. Thanks for the question. How long did it take you to become in network on most insurers? Did you hire a credentialer? Are you doing OBS and only premiums? Good question. And go ahead, Dr. Early.
Yeah, great question. Hi, Roma. It's nice to see you. I am in the process right now of credentialing, and I'm told that that often can take up to like 120 days. So I've received approval from a few, and there's some that are still in the works. And we're probably coming up on maybe 45 to 60 days since turning in the credentialing application. So I am going through the insurance pathway. That is just something that I from what I've learned from others who have been ahead of me on this path is it really helps patients come through the door. So there is a model of not taking insurance, and that seems to work really well for the people who do it. But in my market and in my situation, I decided that I would credential with the most common insurers in the area, and I think that will help bring patients through the door. And then I think there was a second part of that question. I
Yeah,
did
are you doing?
hire
Yeah.
a consultant who has helped with a lot of the practice startup, and part of that service did include a credentialer. So that's something that I did sort of outsource, and I am planning to do OBS, not only premium IOLs. I'll do cases that are unhealthy or not suitable for OBS at an ASC with anesthesia available on staff. But no, by no means is it all premium. So of course, premium lenses will be available and part of my offering, but I'm not going to like refer patients out who are not selecting premium lenses.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Just as a curiosity, and it comes up a lot. What do you plan to do for anesthesia in your OBS?
Oral, oral sedation. So
Okay,
Valium. Yeah.
got it.
MK
Uh,
melts. Yep.
yeah, I was just going to say, ask if you're
hmm
thinking about the melt. Okay.
hmm
That's quite something we use for efficiency and patient comfort in our centers.
hmm
Um, so I just want to round the corner here on our conversation. First of all, it's been a good, amazing discussion so far, and there's so much I want to ask in the next, 60 days as you're getting to launch. What's the official open date?
I don't have an official open date yet. It's going to be end of February, early March is what we're targeting based on the construction timeline.
Yeah.
So no hard date set yet, but that's the timeline.
Well, will you, I hate to put you on the spot, but will you accept a formal invitation to come back to us in a year and give us everything
Absolutely.
I learned, things I wish I would have done
Absolutely.
differently? Okay.
100%.
I wish you well, and you're gonna do just great. And call anytime.
Thank you so much.
We want to see you succeed, and I'm happy that you've partnered with some of the folks on this call with some of your first steps. Next week, everybody, we're talking to Joel Gaslin. He's the president and CEO of Navigate Patient Solutions. Navigate, of course, is the a partner that helps you pre-educate your patients about premium IOLs. They're also doing some work in interventional glaucoma for pre-education as well. And I think those two things in particular are going to be the make it or break it topics for 2026 in your practices. With reimbursement getting hit, we really only have a few release valves, and I believe that we are under communicating the benefit of advanced IOLs in cataract surgery. A little side note on that, I was at OSN New York this last weekend and gave a talk. Alcon did a study at the end of 2023 that 51% is all of cataract prospects, 50 and older, knew that there was advanced technology options as part of their cataract surgery. That's
Wow.
18 years after these things came to market. And so we are still nowhere as far as saturation of the market. And it's not like the 51% knew it enough to strongly consider it. They just knew that it was an option. So
Yeah.
but we have a lot of work to do in our practices, and it bodes well for patients because we're going to make a lot of people happy, and it bodes well for practices because they're going to be more profitable, which is good for everyone. But Joel's going to talk to us about the pre-education process. I've been a friend of Joel's for the last 25 years when he worked with us as our lens distributor, and our was the CEO of SightPath for laser centers as well. So that's going to be a really great conversation. Thanks everybody for joining. Dr. Early, thanks for spending some time with us. We look forward to hearing more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks everybody for jumping on here and taking time out of your day. And thank you so much for all your support, Matt. I really, really appreciate it. And I look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, you're going to win.